If you have anxious attachment, this might be hard to hear. The reason you're suffering is not because you're chasing that person. The reason you're suffering is because somewhere along the way you learn to love them more than you love yourself. And I know it sounds harsh, but stay with me. Healing anxious attachment is not about pretending you don't care. It is not about being cold, and it is not about playing games. Healing anxious attachment comes when you finally become someone who refuses to abandon themselves. Most people think that anxious attachment starts when you start loving someone too much, but it does not. Anxious attachment starts when you start feeling not worthy enough without them. Deep down, anxious attachment is built on a few beliefs. I am not enough. People always leave. I have to earn love. And because those beliefs hurt so much, you start looking for someone else to prove them wrong. You need reassurance, you need certainty, you need validation, you need attention because if they give you those things, then maybe you will feel enough. But no amount of love, of validation, of reassurance, of certainty is ever enough for someone who has anxious attachment. I am really sorry to tell you that because you are operating from a wound and other people cannot heal that wound for you. Also, your worth should never depend on someone else's decision. Think about how much energy anxious attachment consumes. Checking your phone, rereading messages, analyzing their tone. And then you start wondering. You start wondering if you said the wrong thing. You start wondering if they're losing interest. You start wondering if they found someone else. Don't you see how exhausting that is? And the reason it's so exhausting is because your nervous system starts trying to solve a problem that no relationship can solve. The problem isn't will they stay? The problem is do I believe I'm worthy if they don't? And that's the real question. Because here's the thing most people with anxious attachment don't realize. You are not attached to that person. You are attached to what that person represents. Safety, validation, certainty, worth, value. And that's why even when the relationship is hurting you, even when your needs are not met, even when you're crying every week, you stay because leaving means losing your source of worth. Not losing the person, losing your source of worth. But healing begins when something important shifts. When you stop asking, how do I make them stay? How do I make them choose me? And you turn it instead into, why am I choosing someone who makes me question my value? And that's the real question. That's where the conversation begins. And let me tell you a secret. One of the biggest signs of healing anxious attachment is leaving situations that hurt you. Not because you stopped loving them or not because you stopped caring, but because you finally started loving yourself too and caring for yourself too. Because people are gonna tell you that leaving is easy. It's not. I'm not gonna tell you that leaving them or leaving that situation is easy. Leaving sometimes feels like the worst thing you will do. It feels like the most difficult decision you have ever made. And it feels so difficult because every wound inside of you is screaming, stay. Maybe they will change. Maybe they will finally see my value. Maybe they will finally choose me. But self love says, I love you, but this is hurting me. I care for you deeply, but I cannot keep abandoning myself like this. Self love says, I wish this worked. I really do. But my needs matter too. Do you realize the incredible strength that requires? And that's why healing does not happen overnight. It is built because building strength takes time. But you're still gonna make it because there's no other way around. Someone that treats you like an option has to get out of your life. You're not an option. Most of the time, self love feels like accepting reality instead of clinging to hope. And sometimes self love feels like walking away, it feels like grief. A lot of people with anxious attachment have been taught that love means sacrifice. So they start sacrificing their peace, they start sacrificing their boundaries, they start sacrificing their standards, and then they call it love. That's not love, that's just self abandonment in disguise. Love would never require you to constantly betray yourself. It would never require you to lower your boundaries. It would never, ever require you to betray your standards. And there's this one idea that changed in my life. You have to love yourself more than you love your partner. Always. And I know it sounds wrong, it sounds selfish, and it sounds unhealthy, but it is actually healthy. Because loving yourself more does not mean you will care less about them. It means you will refuse to place another human being above your own well being. It means understanding that the relationship you have with yourself is the longest relationship you will ever have in this life. But if you constantly keep destroying yourself in order to keep someone, what does your relationship with yourself look like? I already know the answer. When you truly begin healing anxious attachment, you stop trying to convince other people to love you and you start observing. Can they meet my needs? Can they communicate? Am I gonna need to lower my standards for that person? Do we share the same values? Can they show consistency? Can they build a healthy relationship with me? Do you see how healthy these questions are? Because sometimes two people can care deeply for each other but still be incompatible. And they can care genuinely for each other and still not be able to meet each other's needs. And my dear, accepting that is a part of emotional maturity. Sometimes one of the most loving things you can tell yourself is, I don't think this person is bad, but I don't think they're capable of meeting my needs. And that's a huge shift because instead of trying to force reality, you are accepting it. And reality creates freedom. And here's something that no one tells you. When you stop chasing unavailable people, when you stop settling for breadcrumbs, when you stop begging for consistency, you create space. You'll ask me, create space for what? Space for healthier love, for peace, for people who are actually able to meet you halfway. Space for relationships that don't feel like emotional survival. Because, my dear, healthy love feels quite different. Healthy love would never keep you guessing all the time. Healthy love will not make you compete and perform to get affection. Healthy love will not make you obsess and it will not trigger your fear of abandonment. Healthy love feels safe, predictable, steady, mutual. And the reason why so many people with anxious attachment struggle with healthy love is because it is not familiar to their nervous system. Your nervous system is used to chaos, and that's why toxic relationships and poor, unhealthy relationships feel addictive to you and they feel like love because that's what your nervous system recognizes. Because when you enter your first healthy relationship with someone that is consistent, emotionally available, feel safe, predictable, your nervous system will find it boring. You will say that there is no chemistry, but that does not mean that's the reality of the relationship. It just isn't familiar to your nervous system yet, but it will become that if you keep staying, if you keep showing up. Because if you can teach your nervous system that danger and chaos feel like love and healthy and safe feel boring, you can do it the other way around too. So, if you're healing anxious attachment, here's one thing I want you to remember. The goal is not becoming someone who does not care. The goal is not avoiding. The goal is simply loving yourself deeply too and prioritizing your own needs. Because when you love yourself deeply enough, you stop chasing people who cannot meet your needs. and you stop making your worth depend on someone else's ability to choose you. And that's very healthy. It's protection. Because the moment you truly understand your value, the moment you truly and genuinely understand that you are enough, anxious attachment loses power over you and everything else changes. And yes, choose yourself to be chosen. And I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.